Alors bonjour, ici Romain Collignon du blog le décodeur du nonverbal.fr. Alors j'ai le plaisir aujourd'hui d'accueillir pour cette interview le docteur Matsumoto, qui est un grand expert dans le domaine des émotions, des micro-expressions et du comportement non-verbal. Alors le docteur Matsumoto est actuellement professeur de psychologie à l'université de San Francisco et le directeur d'une entreprise tout à fait unique en son genre, HumanTel. Alors une fois n'est pas coutume, on va continuer cette interview en anglais et vous allez pouvoir apprécier mon accent unique en son genre. So, hello Dr. Matsumoto.
Hello.
Perhaps as a starting point for this interview, could you tell us your story and what brought you into this fascinating field of nonverbal communication?
Well, I don't know if I have so much of a story to tell. I remember that I've always been fascinated with, since I was an undergraduate at the University of Michigan, I was interested in how children could understand their parents' emotional states, even though they could not understand the words.
Yeah.
And that interest led me to do a research project when I was an undergrad, on how kids, who preschoolers actually, 3 to 5 year old preschoolers, can understand emotions expressed in paralinguistic cues and not in the words. And that research project, because it involved paralinguistic cues, led me to the world of nonverbal behavior.
Okay.
And at the time, since I also do judo, I was going to Japan for training in judo, and so since I had to do the study and I had to do something during the daytime, I decided to collect data in Japan with the help of some friends there.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I came back to Michigan, I was able to do a cross-cultural study.
Okay.
So it was pretty much by coincidence or circumstance that I was able to do a cross-cultural study on judgments of nonverbal behavior. And that was my start, actually. When I came to Berkeley to go to graduate school, I was advised by my advisor at Michigan to go and look up my subsequent advisor here in San Francisco, Paul Ekman,
Yeah.
which I did, and then I studied with him. And at that point, it became more of, the more you study something, the more you can't get out of it.
Yeah, sure.
So after 4 or 5 more years of that, I just that was kind of my thing to do. And it all happened just because of an initial interest in how kids could understand emotions, even though they didn't understand words.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for your story. And so you got interested into nonverbal communication. And now,
Yep.
Dr. Matsumoto, you are also director of HumanTel,
Yep.
a company that provide unique training in nonverbal communication. So
Yep.
could you tell us more about your company and the work you are doing there?
Well, sure, Mike. As you know, in academia, there are many people who study nonverbal behavior and produce a lot of information about it, myself
Mm-hmm.
included. And what my company does is that first of all, we do a lot of research. So we conduct many applied, some basic studies as well, but it's mostly applied studies
Okay.
that focus on nonverbal as well as verbal behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
and that to generate information and knowledge that people can use in their everyday lives or in certain types of professions.
Yeah.
So then we take that knowledge generated from the research that we and others do, and we create training programs that will help people learn how to read and understand that nonverbal and verbal behavior
Mm-hmm.
when they're interacting with others. So that anybody who's in a profession that involves face-to-face interaction, and where it's very important for them to get an additional information about the people that they're talking to, so that those people can learn a little bit more and gain a little edge in that interaction. So basically, my company does that type of applied research and takes the research information and then creates training programs and then delivers the training programs to individuals who want to learn about that kind of information.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Dr. Matsumoto. I know your program because I am on it, and there is a lot of what we call microexpressions.
Yep.
And But for me, just from my inside, I think microexpression is not really a clue you can use in your everyday life, and that it's better to concentrate on more obvious gesture. I think you don't see them if you are not trying to look for them. So, what is your point of view about this?
Well, I think that you're certainly right. I mean, in everyday normal everyday social life, it's not necessary to learn about microexpressions, and people, human beings, have been around for a long time without training
Hmm.
on learning microexpressions, and certainly human beings have succeeded in survival. So it's very clear that people do not need to learn how to read microexpressions in order for us to navigate everyday social life. But there's two issues about that. Number one,
Yeah.
there are some professions where it is useful to learn about micro expressions
Hmm.
because one wants to gain an edge in understanding how a person is actually feeling.
Yeah.
And so in those particular professions, learning micro expressions is useful. In every normal everyday social life, micro expressions are not as important, but people would want to learn how to read emotions in general, as well as other kinds of gestures, as you mentioned.
Yeah. Okay. You told me earlier you got interested into nonverbal communications through culture.
Uh-huh.
And if I'm not wrong, you are investigating also now. Your research are about also culture and emotions. And
Yes.
yeah, so I was just wondering if you could tell us what are currently the hottest topics in this field, if you can speak about it.
Okay. Well, the field of culture and emotion is very large,
Yeah.
and there are many researchers who study that particular topic. Um, you can kind of separate them according to what aspect of the emotion they study. So,
Uh-huh.
for example, if you study facial expressions and other behaviors,
Yeah.
expressive behaviors, that's actually one aspect of emotion. Some people study the physiological reactions that people have of emotion. Some
Mm-hmm.
people have studied the emotional experiences that we label in our words. Some people study the attitudes we have about emotions. And in fact, the more cognitive the aspect of emotion you study,
Yeah.
the heavier the cultural influences are. So, for example, when you're studying the immediate physiological reactions, immediate expressive behaviors, the cultural differences are minimal.
Yeah.
However, if you're studying things about language or things that are rooted in attitudes and values about emotion, then the cultural differences are larger. And so there's a wide range of topics within that field, and a wide range of cultural versus biological influences that people uncover.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I know what you mean. I read something today. It said if you are traveling, you understand better people because you
Mm.
know the other culture and you know how to speak to other people.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Um, Dr. Matsumoto, you have this academic view of the world of nonverbal communication. And
Uh-huh.
because I know there are different ways to learn nonverbal communication,
Mm-hmm.
some seems to be more reliable and others seems to come from nowhere. And
Yep.
what is your insight on this topic? Can you tell us how you proceed as an academic to investigate nonverbal communication?
Well, that's a great question, and how we do that depends upon what we're studying. But I'll
Oh,
give you an
yeah,
example.
yeah, sure.
I mean, there are a lot of experts, quote unquote, experts out there in the field that say that they're experts, for example, in gestures and nonverbal behavior.
Yeah.
When you read a lot of what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
it's really their knowledge is based upon mostly upon their anecdotal experiences.
Yeah.
They could be a former police officer or a former FBI agent or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, which is fine. I mean, experiences is a very valuable source of data.
Mm-hmm.
But as a researcher, we take experiences as the starting point rather than the end point, and we then employ scientific methods of inquiry
Mm-hmm.
to validate whether our experiences are true or not true for everybody else.
Okay.
That's really the big difference. I mean, when you employ the methods of science, what you're trying to find are some generalizable principles of knowledge that are generalizable beyond one's own individual experience. So, and that's really the difference. So, for example, there's a lot of people who say, "Oh, when you're talking to somebody and they cover their face with if they cover their mouth with their hands,
Yeah.
they're ashamed of what they're saying, and so because they're probably lying."
Yeah.
Well, some people may have that experience and may have that strong belief.
Yeah.
But if you actually test that in terms of some actual studies, you find that does not come out to be true.
Yeah. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah, sometimes yes and sometimes no. And so
Yeah.
that's what and I hesitate in going and teaching others about what are just my experiences because number one, I'm a researcher, I'm a scientist, and so I
Yeah.
believe in the methodology. And number two, I don't think I want to be teaching people the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And what may be right for one person's experience may be entirely incorrect for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And that's the big difference. It's not to knock down anyone's experience because I do believe experience is a great teacher and a great source of information.
Mm-hmm.
But as a scientist, experience is the start of believing something.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the difference.
And thank you. I have a last question for you, Dr. Matsumoto.
Sure.
And if you had one advice for my readers
Mm-hmm.
to improve the reading of body language, what would be this advice?
Oh, learn to read the face.
Yeah.
The face is the seat of emotion. I mean, the face is not everything, and emotion is not everything. But if you wanted to learn one thing well, I'd go there. It's the place with the biggest payoff.
Okay.
Okay. Of course, it's not everything. Of course, it's not everything, but it is the one place with the biggest payoff.
Thank you very much for your time, for your great materials, and I really appreciate your insight. It's the reason why I called you. And thank you very much for your content. It was very interesting and valuable.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
Bye.
Bye.